Well, it was actually opening up the Holiday Inn Sunsbury back in 1992. I saw an ad for a new resort that was being opened in Whistler, and I just finished hotel resort management school in Kamloops at Thompson Rivers University. And I thought, well, I'll apply for that. And my advisors actually told me going to a resort, like going to someplace like Whistler or Banff or Jasper, you can advance your career much faster than going to the city, which was true. I was like, holy smokes. I was hired as a senior front desk clerk, and within 6 months, I was the front office manager. It was pretty crazy. Yeah, but that's what I originally came to Whistler for, was to open up the Holiday Inn Sunsbury. And the resort actually opened in 1993. Really goes back to the early days in 1994. I wasn't really out at the time. I was interested about it, but was keeping it at arm's length because back in the early 90s, it still wasn't very comfortable being gay or being out, worried about career opportunities and that kind of stuff. So Brent, who was the owner of Altitude out on the slopes at the time, had approached me when I was at the Holiday Inn to see if we'd be interested in being a hotel sponsor. And so I came on board as a hotel sponsor, and they were looking for some extra help. So I volunteered to help with the fashion show. And so that was pretty exciting just to be part of it. And it was actually really quite funny because the very first time I went to the Snowball, I was thinking it was like a ball, like everybody gets dressed up in a nice ball gown or a tuxedo or whatever. And I went with a couple of my colleagues from work, and they're in these beautiful dresses, and I'm in a suit, and we get in there and like everybody's half naked, and we're just like, oh my God. So it was kind of an eye opener. But also back in 94, I was a member of Quintum, which was one of the gay groups back in the day, and it stood for Queers in the Mountain. And then in the early 2000s, there was a new ski group that was created by Peter Dinez called Ski Out. And then we eventually created a martini social happy hour or social event once a month at the Southside Diner called Whoosh. And I was able to help with that. So yeah, that's kind of how I got involved with Ski Week way back in the day. And then when Brent passed away in December 30th, 2003, Lee Bergeron took over the production of Altitude back then. And eventually he ended up walking away from it. He wasn't interested in the property up in Canada. He was an American, and he was more interested in his US businesses at the time. So Sean Kearns, who owned gaywhistler.com at the time, approached a couple of our local business people, including myself and Tatiana, who was working at the Whistler Village Inn and Suites at the time, and Peter Dinez, and came up with a plan on how we might be able to rescue the event, and that happened back in 2006. Yeah, so Gay Ski Week was really created in the really early 90s. 1990 is when Vancouver hosted the Gay Games. And so British Columbia all of a sudden, or Vancouver, really became a little bit more known on the gay circuit as a possible destination. And then in 1992, 91, 92, Colorado passed legislation that was very, very homophobic. It was called Amendment 2. And it basically gave landlords and businesses the opportunity to openly discriminate against gays and lesbians. So if you were known to be a homosexual, your landlord or your employer could either evict you or fire you, and you'd have no recourse. It was just absolutely terrible. Brent at that time had owned bed and breakfast here in Whistler, and had been going to Colorado for a number of years and going out to Fire Island out in New York. And he, along with a group of his friends, said, why don't you guys come to my home mountain where, it's better, and we can have our own gay ski week rather than putting our money into a state that doesn't actually appreciate who we are as human beings. And so that's what really started Whistler's Gay Ski Week, which was born out of activism, really. So that was pretty exciting. In the early 90s, it was still difficult being gay. We were still just coming out of the horrible pandemic, another pandemic, which was HIV/AIDS at the time. And there was a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about what that disease was all about. And a lot of businesses were nervous about having so many gay people in the resort. And in the early years, finding support was difficult. But there was one company that really stood out among all others, and that was Monk's Grill and general manager Beverly Brown. And she stood up and welcomed the gay and lesbian community with open arms. And that's where the very first snowball was held, was at Monk's Grill. In the early years, again, Brent really struggled to get the local business community to really buy into the importance of this community and the value it had. So one of the years, I think it was in 94, 95, he ran the Pink Dot campaign. And basically what he did, as people were checking in for the event, was handing out sheets of pink dots to everybody and really encourage people to put pink dots on all of their money. And if they were paying by credit card, put a pink dot on your credit card receipt, just so the merchants could see gay money coming into the resort. And that really turned the attitudes around. It's like, wow, there is a big impact here. And that's when attitudes really started to shift, which was pretty exciting. Yeah, the municipality, it has definitely evolved over the years, which has been great. We're really fortunate. In the early years, we actually had Ted Nibbling, who was an openly out gay mayor, and he was quite supportive of the event. And same with, there was many different people within the municipality that were supportive. And I remember there was one time when there was a conflict between the Gay Ski Week and the National Brotherhood, which was a large ski group from the US that was mainly people of color coming in. And there was a conflict between the two, and the municipality really defended, saying, everybody's welcomed in our resort, but you cannot call one group out over another. Like, we welcome everybody. And that really set a really nice message for us to say, hey, we're kind of an invisible minority. And it's really wonderful to have an ally that's actually standing up for us and saying, hey, it doesn't matter who you love, just as long as you're being respectful. And that was their message, which was really good. And then it wasn't really until the late 2000s that we were able to start getting some funding from the municipality. And that's when things really changed for us. And we were able to bring in some of the bigger name entertainment and really ramp things up, which was pretty exciting. Oh, with a lot of stress and anxiety and excitement and balls. I was director of sales and marketing at the Pan Pacific at the time, and when we found out that Altitude was going to be canceled, we knew that we had all these people coming in for Gay Ski Week, and their vacation packages were basically non-refundable. So they're coming regardless if something's happening or not. And so our small team with Tatiana, Sean, and Mark, and Wayne, and myself, we came up with a plan to try and rescue the event. And our attitude was, well, it's kind of like a corporate event. These are the things that need to be done, so let's just make it happen. And that's when we did. We just made everything happen, and it wasn't until Saturday at like 10:30 at night that we had recovered our investment back of all the deposits that we had to put out and all that kind of stuff. And we're just like, oh my God, we broke even. Like, wow, this is pretty remarkable. It's yeah, it was a pretty exciting time. And the one thing that we did do in 2006, when we said that we're going to take it over, we met with Tourism Whistler and the municipality, and we said, okay, if we're doing this, we need to let our guests know that this event is happening. So we want to be able to put rainbow flags on the main street, on Village Gate Boulevard, to welcome people and put our banners up. And that's what the municipality said. Okay, we'll work with you and make that happen. And we had that out, and that was, it was quite emotional for a lot of people when they were taking the Whistler perimeter in and coming around the corner and seeing rainbow flags, because that was the first time in the event's history that we were really out and proud and really visible, and just like, wow, this is really happening. And it just, the attitude or the energy of the village just shifted, just knowing that it's Pride Week, and it was pretty special, very, very exciting. Pride House really developed over the years. So I guess we have to go back a little bit in time. I think it was in 2007. I think it was 2007. Toronto trademarked the word pride in Canada. And we had just launched, rebranded Altitude as Winter Pride. And so we had pride in our name, and we needed to understand what this was all about. So I went down to Vancouver at a board meeting for Vancouver Pride, because they were preparing their reaction to what Toronto was doing. And in the process of doing so, I was elected onto the board of Vancouver Pride. And before I knew it, I was part of that team as well, which took me to Zurich. And at Zurich, that's where we had our Interpride conference, and that's where we met activists from all over the world, and we learned what pride meant in other nations where it was very hostile. And that's when the lights really went off for us, or went on, and just like, wow, we need to do something. And prior to that, I was involved with Tourism Whistler and promoting our Olympic bid and just being part of that Olympic magic. And so when we came back to Vancouver, we're just like, okay, so the next Olympics are going to be in Sochi, and Sochi is quite hostile. So if we create our own pavilion here in Vancouver, and it goes well, we have a good opportunity to make that happen again in London. So by the time it comes to Sochi, we have a really good opportunity to have LGBT visibility there and create a safe space. And so that was our thought process. And going through and creating the Pride House, it, it gave us the ability to really look at sports and entertainment and see how much homophobia there was within that industry, where, you know, being out athlete, there were very, very few at the time, because everybody was so afraid of their career and getting hurt. Like if you were a gay hockey player, like would you become a target, and or is everybody going to start checking you into the boards, and are you going to have problems? Same in football, like are you going to get tackled and have concussions? So it was very, very difficult. So we thought by creating Pride House, we can start the conversation. And we knew that if there was enough awareness about homophobia within sport, then we could start advocating at the senior levels within sport to start making their sporting environments safer for their athletes so they could be safe. And initially we had some pushback saying, well, we don't have any gay athletes, so why do we need to do this? And so it became a really great learning opportunity for those agencies to learn that language has a lot of power in the locker room and on the field. So if you start coaching your team members to use inclusive language, then you might have more athletes that feel more confident in coming out. And so that's what happened. Also at Pride House, we created a media room where unaccredited media could come in and talk about what was happening at Pride House. And it gave them more airtime as well. So I think that's why our story really took off, is because we gave them a fresh new story to talk about the Olympics and what is this gay house. And I remember in June when we became the leading story of the 2010 Olympics in 2009. I was on the front page of the Monday sports sections of the New York Times that these Olympics are going to be the gayest ever. And the IOC was not overly impressed that this was the leading story coming out of the New York Times at the time, but it was very empowering, and it was very, very exciting for us to show that, you know, these Vancouver Games are going to be really, really special, and this is the legacy that we gift to the world, and it continues to this day. It's pretty remarkable. Well, the parade actually started in 2010, and when we hosted the Olympics, we were the first event that we know of that actually straddled both the Olympics and the Paralympics, because normally during the Olympic period, nothing happens. And we approached the municipality and Bannock, and we said, you know, this is what we would like to do, because doing it before the Olympics is going to be too difficult. It's too early in the season. And doing it after the Paralympics is too late in the season. So there's nothing happening in between the two events. So can we slot ourselves in between that? And we finally got agreement, and we were able to find a little bit of space, and it was just really complicated putting the event on in 2010, but we did it regardless. So back in 2010, there was sports commentators that made some very disparaging remarks against Johnny Weir, the U.S. men's figure skater. And we at Pride House called up Tourism Whistler, our team at Tourism Whistler, who was working the Whistler Media House at the time, and said, we would like to hold our press conference today to discuss this. And so they cleared a spot for us with Olympic Broadcast Corporation for us to be able to hold this press conference. And so we marched from the Pride House, which was at the Pan Pacific Whistler Village Center at the time. We walked down the stairs through the village with our rainbow flags, and we circled the Olympic rings before we went into the Whistler Media House, which was at Morris Young Millennium Place. That's where the press conference was held. And it was probably the most dramatic press conference that the Whistler press team held during the Olympics and Paralympics. And yeah, it was very, very exciting. So we've held on to that tradition ever since. And I think it's really important to have that visibility. And it's so non-commercial. It's very grassroots. It's just everybody's able to just come in and be part of that march and remember where we've come from and create that visibility. Well, I think the main core of the events have been consistent. So having the ski guide program has always been consistent, which has been really great. We've always had the après ski, which again is consistent throughout all the years. The comedy show has always been a staple. Sometimes the comedy show had been replaced by a fashion show, or we've done fashion shows in addition to the comedy show. And then the snowball, of course, has always been there. The one event that has gone away, unfortunately, was the tea dance on Friday night, which was our big rave up at the Roundhouse. And unfortunately, 2010 was the last year that we were able to do a big dance party up on top of the mountain. And it's something that we all miss terribly. And we would love to have an opportunity to have those big parties back up on the mountain again. In 2007, we worked with a couple women producers that specialized in lesbian events. And we had a really great relationship with some lesbian publications like Diva Magazine and Lotto out of Australia and Go Magazine in New York. They were really big sponsors, and we were able to get a lot of women out. But in 2008, after the economic crash, the following year, we did not really see the women come back. And it was really hard for us to continue on producing women-only events. So I think 2010 was the last year that we actually had women-specific events, and then it just became blended again. In I guess 2008, was it 2008, 2009, 2010, like in around that time, we started to see a shift of the community moving more online. That's when apps started to come out, so like the dating apps and that kind of stuff. So it started really having an effect on how people would be interacting, and we continue to see that even with some of our larger events, where the need of coming together at a ticket event is not as strong as it had been in the early 90s and even in the 80s, when we came together to find community to fight HIV and AIDS and just be together as a community. But I think what's really important for Whistler is just having that visibility and being able to create that connection of people. And I think what's really special about Whistler is people feel really comfortable just being themselves. So being able to walk with your boyfriend's hand down the village stroll, even if the boyfriend is only 20 minutes old, it just feels great just to be a regular person. And and I think that's really, really special. And I think that's why people continue to come back to Whistler is just feeling safe to be themselves. There's so many. It's like having the pool party at Meadow Park is always so much fun. Being able to do the spa night at the Scandinav Spa, you know, the very first year that we did that was pretty special. People were a little nervous, like, okay, how is this going to work? Is people going to be out of control, or what's going to happen? And it was absolutely magic. Having the mountaintop parties, oh my gosh, so many amazing memories there. And just having that very first memory of going to my very first snowball with um, my my two friends at work, and being completely clueless as to what snowball really was, and just looking back at that now, just like, how could I not know? So yeah, it's neat. And I think the other thing that's really exciting to see is um, we were able to get the rainbow crosswalks at Whistler. Um, Alphabet Soup was created, so a beautiful LGBTQ youth program in Whistler started, and Spectrum to Whistler Blackcomb, a new LGBTQ um, group within the mountain began. um, Being able to influence Whistler Blackcomb and putting in on an LGBT page on their corporate website was a really big deal, because they were the first ski resort in the world to do that. And that really also influenced the type of workers that would come to Whistler too, because if you were a young person and you were questioning yourself, or queer, or wherever you fed on that spectrum, and you wanted a gap year, you would choose Whistler over any other ski resort, because you knew that it's a safe place to be yourself. And I think that was really important, and I think that's why we've been able to attract some really beautiful people to come and work and live and stay and build families. This year, of course, Whistler Pride officially did not proceed because of the pandemic, but it was really exciting to see that the municipality took their own initiative to light up Fitzsimmons Bridge with the rainbow colors, and do a flag parade on the mountain, and show that, you know, we're here in spirit. And it's just exciting to see when the community takes that initiative, and Pride is more than just an event now. It's an attitude, it's a spirit of the community, and it's a core value. So it's really, really important.